First of all, I must thank Shiv for somehow identifying me and asking me to come for this program. I knew him through the magazine that you introduced, Irfan Saab, but I did not know much about it. But then the way he said left no scope for saying anything else other than to say that yes, I'll be there. And I'm extremely delighted to be here. And even before coming here, by seeing the program, when I saw the name of Professor G.C. Tripathi Saab, when I was Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Himachal, he was heading BHU. Of course, a very big university and a very challenging task. So we used to meet occasionally. And then we belong to the same Purvanchal area, Allahabad and Ghazipur and other things. And of course, Irfan Rizvi has been a good friend for a long time. I still remember that we had done some HR development program for international participants that was in Dalhousie. And since then, we have been together. And a couple of minutes here in the audience, I sat in the front row and started speaking to the gentleman, Ahmad Ali Saab. And then I found that there is a relationship between me and him. He is the nephew of Sayyid Shahid Mehdi, who hails from Ghazipur, and I too come from Ghazipur, and your brother have in-laws from Ghazipur. So these are the kind of connections, so I feel very, very at home. Teachers have rarely been appreciated during their lifetime. We often recall and remember their contribution and how great some of them were after a couple of centuries have gone by. There is a renowned Arab sociologist, Ibn Khaldun. He wrote a 12-volume treatise on the sociology and history of Arab world, and in fact Muslim world. And in this 12th century, he is narrating various events. So at one place in his introduction, he says that for this scholar, his father was a teacher. And then he immediately stops and he says, no, not a teacher of today's time, in 12th century, not a teacher of today's time. Today's teachers are commercial, money-oriented. They don't do anything for their students and disciples. He was teacher 200 years ago or some time ago, and he was a committed teacher. And therefore, we are, as a teacher, often at the receiving end. And there have been occasions when one pretext or the other were used to say that the days of the teachers are gone. And luckily or unfortunately, whichever way you want to say, when COVID struck us all and everything went online, they said that now we should write obituary of the brick and mortar university, and now every teaching learning process will move. Chaturvedi ji Adab, will move digital. At that time, somebody was editing a volume from Spain, and they asked me to write a futuristic article. Somehow I was of the view at that time, and there was a basis for that. I said that this is a temporary, transient phase, and digital technology is important. We should all embrace, But as soon as we are through with the pandemic, the life in higher educational institution will be life as usual. So send the piece, and they replied that this is too realistic. We want a futuristic article. So in that futuristic article, I drew a kind of scenario where all digital divide is taken care of, all the problems of electricity, etc., is taken care through artificial sun, and then there were many innovations in the process. So there should be some institution which should recognize qualifications and give degrees. So why do we have so many universities? Just one university would be sufficient where somebody could go and say that I know these, and therefore you should recognize. So national qualification recognition authority kind of a thing. And then I said, okay, why only nationally? It could be an international agency, and so on and so forth. And then the punch line of that was that at the end I wrote that suddenly I heard a commotion, and I suddenly woke up from my slumber, and my students were asking, sir, would you take your class? So that article was published. They said, okay, yes, it is futuristic, but also you stuck to your point. Why did I feel so at that time? Because when plague used to strike Europe in 15th and 16th century for over 300 years, every time there is a news of plague, all universities and academic institutions in Europe would close down. Students and teachers would migrate to villages. They would stay in manor houses, which will be open for others. Villages were considered safe. In fact, Newton himself, as a teacher, as a student, had to shift from the university to a manor house. But as soon as the plague would be over, the universities would come back to their normal, and none of those manor houses ever became any research or teaching academies. Not even one where Newton did most of the experiment during one of the plague's time. Now, presently we are going through this information technology, but this technology has been an ever-changing process. This is not for the first time that some technology has happened. So remember, when printing press was invented, they said that now all the gurus and teachers, their days are gone. The knowledge that Brahmin had in their hearts and heads, now that has come in print, and if people know how to read and write, they will read the book, and the teacher would become extinct. But we all know that teacher and that textbook has become two inseparable part. Teachers write textbook, they use textbook to teach, other people do write the textbook, and the teachers and the textbook, they both are surviving, and the printing industry is also surviving. When radio was invented, people said, now here is the case. So far, a teacher has been addressing only 40 people, 50 people in a classroom. Now the whole world is a classroom, and there were dedicated radio broadcasting stations established to teach people. For some time, people did listen. Even in our country, much later, we had those radio stations broadcasting educational programs. But then somehow, it didn't click with the student. And the later on explanation was that this is a one-way technology. There it is only communication, there is no interaction. And it is a voice only, You don't see the face. So that connect is not there. So television came. And in India particularly, there were dedicated channel. In fact, Z came into existence only through education channel. And it was said that now the universities would be on this platform, digital, where you could see. We know that it is a history. Somehow students did not like learning through television. Even though some of the best teachers may have been roped in, some of the best lectures may have been telecasted. And even now, there are so many TV channels through various forums, 4 or 5 of them in India, and then we had an idea of 1,000 channels through satellite, but somehow that didn't find favor. So they said, yes, people can see a living being talking to them, but then again, the interactivity is an issue. But in some countrywide classroom, there was some telephonic communication established. Still, it did not click. And now the current day technology, they say that it is hugely interactive. I mean, there is hardly any difference between whether you are in class physically or you are attending online. Yes, the technology is a great tool. This is a great enabler. This can help teacher do their jobs much more efficiently. You mentioned artificial technology. I had some data on education, expenditure on education, and I thought that I should use ChatGPT or Perplexity, so I uploaded that file, a time series of the data, did some calculation. Rather than doing the calculation myself, I just asked that do these calculations, etc. That it did. I asked question that has the public expenditure on education increased in real terms. Nominal terms, yes, but in real terms. So Pat came the answer that to have that answer, we need data on inflation. But then it did not stop. It said, would you like me to fetch data of India on inflation? I said, yes, please. And it fetched the data on inflation. It did calculate that, yes, in the nominal terms, expenditure has gone up. In real term, it declined. Then it suggested that there is a problem in this calculation because inflation data are monthly and your public expenditure data are yearly. Would you like me to normalize this data? So it is only in a simple English language dialogue this whole paper was developed and written. So yes, we can improve our research, we can. But what is the situation today? Still, as soon as the COVID was over, the student came running to every campuses. Then we saw a phenomena that a student wanted teaching online, teaching offline in physical mode, but examination online. And even now, say for example, I come from UP and Professor Tripathi has been the chair of the UP State Council for Higher Education. So under this NEP, there are 3 papers that have been introduced for every undergraduate students. So I'm presently with the Integral University, Lucknow, which is the first private university of UP, about 18,000 students. And these 3 papers are Rashtra Gaurav, Hindi, Urdu. So Rashtra Gaurav is compulsory. Between Hindi and Urdu, the student have choice. So now to teach about 8,000 fresh students admitted every year. So where do you have so many teachers? And the rules permit that you could have online teaching. We have a very strong learning system, so we said that there would be online teaching of Rashtra Gaurav, Hindi and Urdu. And every time I have some interaction with these students, they say कि साहब इन classes को physical कर दीजिए, वो online समझ में नहीं आता. उनका argument ये है कि साहब sometimes connectivity is bad, sometimes we are unable to hear. We found a solution that every lecture is recorded and then it is available on the Integral Learning Management portal. A student can access any time, but still every time students keep coming. It means there is something in teaching which makes this person-to-person interaction necessary. Simultaneously, there are also a few things which we don't understand. Every university has a rule that 75% attendance is compulsory. And we all know that by the end of the semester, many students are running from pillar to post कि साहब attendance कम हो गई, माफ कर दीजिए, concession दे दीजिए. And when we say कि भाई you have all these difficulties, understandable, but why didn't you take admission in Open University Milton Keynes or Indira Gandhi National Open University or so many digital that they don't want. So they want to take admission in in-person mode. They don't want to attend the classes. Still they want to appear in examination. But many of them do come to classes. So my understanding so far is that technology will grow by its own pace. That is a phenomena which we are not, or we as a teacher cannot stop. We may have been instrumental because this technology developed in the labs of the universities themselves, but now it is being controlled by commerce and industry. They have their own way of looking at things, so this will happen. So technology would continue to grow. To what extent would this artificial intelligence go? Presently they say that it generates based on its learning of what teachers have already generated, what students have already generated. So it can write code, it can write formula, it can do all the calculations, but the thinking part has to remain with humans. But then there are also evidences that this technology has the potential to start thinking also. And when that happens, perhaps the difference between the natural human intelligence, which made us unique in the whole animal kingdom, would perhaps be taken over by this technology. Will we become redundant, useless as a teacher? Again, we have to see the literature that is available on future of higher education. There are two strands of thought. One strand of thought would be that the universities of the future would be all digital. Teacher would only be there in a very small number, just in case, and the rest of the teaching, etc., would be done by technology. People would learn on their own, and it is true even today that if somebody is really interested and keen on learning anything, everything is available. So this is one school of thought, that highly technology integrated campuses. But the other dominant school of thought is that the universities of the next century, and that is not very far, only about 75 years, they say that the universities of the next century would be the university that we used to have in 14th and 15th century, the blackboards, the chalk, and the purpose of education would be to make people think. ingenuity, thinking has been the hallmark of human civilization. And the universities would have to assume that role of making people continuously think, and so long as we are able to do that, we will survive from one challenge to another. If we fail to do that, then we have this theory of Toynbee's challenge and response theory, that every civilization faces challenge. If it overcomes that challenge, it moves to a higher orbit, and there it faces another challenge, and then the cycle of the progress goes on. And the moment a civilization fails to give appropriate response to the challenge faced, the civilization become dead. And we will not be the only civilization in the world, in the history, to become extinct. We already have evidences over thousands of years and millennia that civilization have become extinct. So it is up to us. These are the challenges which will continue. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and asking me to come here, and I'm extremely delighted to meet you all and to meet friends. For example, I'm meeting Chaturvedi ji after some time. Since I left Delhi, I went to Lucknow, I have not met. So thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. Thank you.